Welcome. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission. It is July 12th. Hard to believe we're just barreling through the year. And so this will be my first meeting as your newly appointed executive director. Thank you for each of you for welcoming me to the commission. I think we have a little bit of technical difficulties. Hopefully that won't be the start and the beginning and an omen for us here. We'll see. It looks like it's a volume issue with our teams, but since no one's on that call, he'll just work that on the sidebar, and then we'll drive on since this is recorded and I can hear you. So that's the main thing. All right. Again, welcome. I appreciate your time, and you're welcome. And I've met most of you, and some of you I've met again. There was probably about 4 years ago, Mr. Bennett, of course, Mansfield, and Mr. Atwood, and Mr. Garrison, and Miss Alexander, and had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Jane this morning, or Dr. Jane this morning. So some of this is old hat, but we'll get into a groove. And you, of course, you're veterans, so you'll steer me, I'm sure, correct if I get off course. So without further ado, Chairman, if you would, we'll call this order. That would be
call this meeting to order.
All right, and then for roll call, Rex Garrison.
Here.
Mr. Atwood.
Present.
Dr. Jane.
Here.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Mansfield.
Here.
Miss Alexander. Here. Miss Haston. All right. We do have a quorum, and if it pleases the chair, we'll move on to the agenda and the notice of meeting.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. The notice of meeting. Notice of the July 12, 2022 meeting of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission is including date, time, and location has been noticed to the Real Estate Appraiser Commission website since November 18, 2021. Additionally, this month's agenda has been posted on the website since July 5th, 2022. So it's been properly noticed. And we can move on to the agenda then.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. If there's any comments or does anyone have anything that they'd like to move around? If not, then Chair, if you wouldn't mind taking a...
Make a motion for to accept the minutes. Is there a motion? I'm sorry, the agenda. I'm moving ahead. I told you, we're going to break a record.
I move to accept the agenda.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Chair. April minutes. You can take a look at that. Now we're ready for the minutes.
Now we're ready. Is there a motion to accept April's minutes?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Minutes approved.
Right. Looks like we now have the experience interviews. You have that in front of you. If it's okay with the chair, I'd like to just read that into the record and then just pick out any that we may have issue with. But we're going to read them in the record.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. We have Justin Rich for licensed. That would be his upgrade. We've got Michaela Blacker for licensed. Jordan Bryant for certified general. We've got Eli McCorkle for certified residential. We've got David Henry, certified residential. Aaron Harville, licensed.
That one's on hold.
Okay. And that's the Aaron Harville?
Harville and Jonathan Fonville both.
Discussion this morning on in regards to, okay, sounds good. All right. So Robert Charles, certified residential, and then Sarah Ice, certified general. The recommendation thus far for those folks, that would be Justin Rich, Michaela Blacker, Jordan Bryant, Eli McCorkle, David Henry, Robert Charles, Sarah Ice, is to approve those upgrades. Is there any discussion on that regard? Okay. Sheriff?
Hearing none, all those, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the experience. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Experience approved.
Right. Patient report. Dr. Jane?
Yes, thank you. So we, the committee has reviewed all of the materials provided by the vendors for continuing education, and the committee recommends approval of the listed. And I would like to also add, there was a request for public request for clarification in the last meeting that what are the materials required for approval. And so I want to just repeat that the committee requires full educational materials, and the examples can include PowerPoint materials and videos or any samples of those teachings, and not just a table of contents. And that is very helpful to the commission to assure the quality of education that the appraisers are receiving. So with that being noted, all of the providers had submitted such materials, and they were found appropriate by the committee. So I make a motion to please approve these courses for continuing education.
Thank you, Dr. Jane, and thank you for that clarification as well. We get those coming through, so we appreciate that.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on education. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Right, looks like we're ready for my portion of it. The budget will be informational, no motions required on that, just to make sure that we give you a sort of a health history of where we're at fiscally. And then the meeting dates, we will need a motion on that as well. But let me get into the budget there. Now, this is the revised budget that I sent you recently. I realized that the one that was in our file had a logarithm error, so the fiscal is working to fix that. And so, yeah, I looked at those totals, and I thought that would be complete chaos. But this one's accurate. This covers us through, it looks like, April. Please keep in mind that the expenditures listed under other are the appraisal subcommittee national registry fees. And as you know, that was a couple years ago that we started to pay those, so that's showing up in the other category. I'm sure you've noticed that before. Michael's probably already covered that, but that's the largest portion of our expenditures that you'll note there. The only thing that stood out was the licensing revenue to me when I was looking over it for April. It looked a little low, resulting in a monthly deficit for April only. I want to see the following month's numbers and to sort of dive into the previous month as well. Sometimes there's reallocations there, but as long as there's once I do a quality review of the following month and our process and procedures and reporting, and it may just be our revenue. Sometimes that happens. You know, we take a dip, and you know sometimes cycles will change. But I want to look at that next month when that's fully reported, and if I see any irregularities there, of course I'll report that back to the commission. Let's see. Other than that, that was the only thing that jumped out at me. Is there any questions from the commission in regards to that? As you can see, we're already on a surplus of 269 this year, 269,000. So, you know, we'll keep watching that, and we may have to have that conversation when it comes to sunset hearings, because as you know, the legislative will always want to have that discussion as regards to budget, and so. As we continue, if we continue to accumulate and add to that bottom line, then we may have to examine possible cuts where those exist. And so, but we'll have that discussion, and we'll make sure that's on track with the overall budgeting goals. And I think we're, you know, definitely have 2 years worth of operations budgets there, so we're not in any harm in that regard. But of course, even if we were to entertain any cuts, we don't want those to trend towards a deficit, and then we're in sunset hearing as well. So it's a very fine line. So we'll keep a track on that, and I'll report back to you if there's any movement on that front.
I do have a question on the fee for the ASC fee. So that's being paid monthly? Is there like how's that calculated? I know you collect it annually from the AMCs, and then further on that, you pay the full fee that you collect from the AMCs to the ASC. So that's basically expense for the state that you're not getting reimbursed for as well, correct? I mean, the accounting and the collecting and the man hours that go into that.
Correct. Caleb, particularly, he's the one that invoices that. Caleb, what they were asking, I know you were sidebarding with the technical aspect and for teams, but our AMC rep, Mr. Bennett, was asking about our payments to the National Registry and how often we pay that. It looks, is it monthly or is it quarterly? I believe it's monthly.
And those come in, I believe. So those are billed from the 25th, from the 26th to the 25th on a monthly rolling basis, and we get that invoice on pretty much the 26th of every month from the ASC. So that's a monthly bill.
All right. All right. Hearing no more questions or comments in regards to the budget, I think we can move on to the meeting dates. All right. You have those before you. You'll notice that our first date is a little bit later than usual in March. It's because they're going to be renovating these rooms through January. And I didn't want to take any chances early February or late January, and then, we're up in the Tennessee Towers or who knows where. So figured just for sake of a little bit of stability for us, we'll just move that one to March. So that shook out the schedule a little bit, but we try to keep that somewhat patterned after what you're accustomed to. So you'll see those dates. Does anyone have any questions in regards to those dates or any conflicts in regards to those dates?
Is November 7th Election Day? I think it is.
That would be the one we'd want to look at.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Let's just.
Recently, we moved our meetings from Monday to Tuesday, and they had, for years, have been on Monday. Is there an issue with anyone with it being on Tuesday versus Monday?
Monday makes a little bit more convenient for out-of-town commission members to hold the meetings if possible. Yeah.
We can revisit these days. That is Election Day. Thank you, Anna. Rooms will be difficult to reserve. I think that's part of the reason why we've gone on Tuesday. I was looking at the calendar, and there's a lot of traffic on Mondays, and so I think that's primarily why we moved to Tuesday.
I think it was more being prepared. Having a meeting first thing Monday morning is the reason we got moved.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll look at Mondays then. That's fine. But there was a lot of traffic there. We won't meet again till November, and so I'm a little concerned if we don't put something down tentatively that they might kind of close up, and then we're sort of just catching some sort of. If it pleases the chair, can we approve this tentatively? Move the date from the 7th so we have something on the calendar to fall back on, and then we'll look at Monday for November. Would that please the commission? Okay. All right. So let's go November 14th, and we might get a little close to Thanksgiving, but still far enough away that I think we can sidestep that. So we'll say instead of November 7th, we'll call that one November 14th so we can get past Election Day. Tentatively approve this schedule so we have something on the books and those rooms reserved, and then we'll carve it up, come back in November, and then give you some Mondays. Did that work out? Okay.
We'll entertain a motion.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Okay, meeting dates approved.
All right. Looks like we're ready for the legal report. So, Anna.
Morning. Hope everyone's doing well. We have the legal report before you to present. Before I start, are there any complaints you'd like to discuss first, or are there any questions before I begin?
Is it 1 through 9 that are dismissed. I aim to write a note on that. And,
Yes, 1 through
Yes.
9.
Yeah, 1 through 9. Can we group those?
I have a question on those.
Okay, is there one in particular, or,
It's the Fannie Mae ones.
okay?
Okay.
Are these actual complaints again, or are they just sent?
They were actual complaints.
So, I'll entertain a motion to accept council's recommendation for 1 through 9.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept council's recommendation for legal cases 1 through 9. After we vote, we'll need to read those into record. Very good. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Very good.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read those into the record.
Very good. Thank you.
Number 1 is 20220194441. Number 2 is 20220188811. 3 is 20210727701. 4 is 20220162291. 5 is 20220006651. 6 is 20220167771. 8 is 202107381. And 9 is 20220222021.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so we can go ahead and move on to number 10 then.
Yes, if you want to summarize number 10. Very good. Thank you.
Number 10 was also filed by Fannie Mae. The respondent states that they believe the adjustments they made were most representative of the market, and they believe that their report was accurate. An expert review was conducted. The expert review found violations in the sales comparison approach. Basically, they found that there was no adjustments made for any household equipment, sale properties and household equipments, including furniture, and that the standard would imply considerations as adjustments should have been completed. Based on the small findings of the expert reviewer, I was recommending a letter of instruction on the aforementioned use PAP violations.
Very good. We have council recommendation. Entertain a motion or discussion.
I would like to make a comment. The reviewer, excuse me, the reviewer's wording here is vague. When the reviewer says sale properties likely included furniture, it's not definitive. I would have a hard time exercising disciplinary action against something that is likely but not proven, not whatever. So I have a concern with the way the reviewer wrote that.
That's why I was recommending the letter of instruction, since that's not technically discipline. It's just referring to those use PAP violations.
I would also appreciate when you hire reviewers and give them instructions that they be explicit. They can't be vague. It doesn't help us.
That's a question too I would have. This is the sales and furniture. Can we, I guess, can assume by that maybe this was some form of doesn't provide us enough information. I'd like to know what type of property this is, what sort of approaches were employed. The information would help.
Unfortunately, I do not have that information. It was not included in the complaint nor the response, but I can definitely express this to this reviewer that they need to be more explicit going forward in what they're stating.
I don't see how we can act on this one until we get a better review report.
This can go back out for re-review if that's something that you would like to have happen.
Motion for that? So moved.
Have a motion for this case to be re-reviewed. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Do you have any specifics that you want me to make sure that the expert includes in the review?
I think what property type the subject property is, what approaches were.
State facts and not presumptuousness or assumptions. State the facts. Don't say likely had furniture. It either had it or it didn't. So that needs to be verified.
And the question on that, and as far as property type, make sure they note if it's a STR or a single-family residential property, because that does jump out as a question to us.
Okay, I'll include that in the
Very
request.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. 11. Oh, I'll go ahead and read that into that number into the
Very good.
record as well for 10. So 10 is 20220115551, and that will be re-reviewed.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. 11 is 202200871. For this one, the complainant was the homeowner. They state that they believe the respondent committed serious errors that affected the final result of the complaint of the report. The respondent stated that they believe that they strived for honesty and that they gave the best report to their knowledge. An expert review was conducted. The expert found that the appraisal failed to determine and perform the scope of work necessary to develop a credible result. They said it appears that there's a significant probability that the property lacks legal access to any surrounding highway, and that the respondent did not look into if there's any easements or any need for illegal road access, and also they did not note how that could affect the value of the property. Based on the expert's finding, I was recommending a consent order requiring continuing education to be completed within 180 days, and for that to be on top of the minimum requirements for license renewal.
Very good. Thank you. We have council recommendation. Is there discussion?
I have the same comments. The reviewer says it appears to have failed something. That's not definitive. Appraisal appears to fail to determine and perform scope of work. We've just and then third line in the next category, it appears that there is significant probability that the property lacks legal access. Those words need to be removed so that we know exactly what's going on. Speculation doesn't help us.
Edge words.
Hedge words. And I mean, I would make a motion for another re-review on this one as well. I haven't got a second yet, but that's all right.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Our motion is for another re-review. Yeah. Now, let me ask this. As far as the comments and what we have, is that the exact words from the reviewer?
It is.
Okay.
There's a little bit of difference between this one and the prior, that this reviewer is a little more specific about the particular violations, even though they have used hedge words. So just wanted to note that.
So if they had not said it appears, like if that language was not there.
Well, the issue is, in the one Jim brought up, it appears that the property lacks legal access to any surrounding roadway. That's the difference of could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you don't have legal access. So it either is or it isn't. It can't
Right.
appear.
I know. I'm just like, my question is, if the document had said it lacks legal access, because I'm trying to understand from a point of view, if we're talking about a writing style of a expert reviewer, or if we're talking about like actual like validity here, because what it looks like to me is we found actual violations here, but the way that the person is writing it is the way that the issue that we're having here. Because
we teach in writing courses not to use these are hedge words. He's hedging his bet. The reviewer is. He's saying, I'm not telling you it doesn't have access, but it looks like it doesn't. Well, that doesn't help us. It either has access or it doesn't have access, and we need to know.
How I read that review is that they were stating that the appraiser did not know if it had access or not, and so they're saying that's why they're saying it appears it has no legal access. I think it was just a choice of words more than them.
I'm asking just not only for this, but just like for moving forward.
How they want it to be.
Because like what you're saying right now, it makes a lot of sense, but like that's not something that I know generally as an attorney. So if that's something that we need to be looking for from our expert reviewers in the future, that makes sense.
Yes.
And I would say in 6 years, I think this is the first time I've heard that brought up. So
it's almost like this is the same appraiser in both cases. I mean,
that's what
I would almost guess that.
That's what, like, I don't know if it is because I didn't review the specific complaints, but just by looking at the way that it's written, it appears that it may be the same, person just based on how it was written. And so I don't want to throw out the validity of a specific review just because of how something is written. So
I don't think we want to punish somebody.
But I understand the importance
either.
of needing to have something be specific and clear. So we can definitely do that. And if it turns out to be the same person, that is something that we can definitely communicate. But moving forward, that's important for us to know.
Yeah, and that's something that I can be specific with in the request of them to not use this kind of language and that they need to state specifically.
And sometimes they may not have all the facts, so it's useful to know when they have the facts and when they're speculating. I mean, we're not saying they cannot use this kind of language, but here it is very confusing. You're saying there is a fact, there is no legal access, right? Then the word appear should not have been used. That's all we're saying.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes. We'll move to number 12.
Okay. Number 12 is 20220222171. This complaint was filed after a homeowner's loan was denied due to the mortgage company stating that the appraisal was unacceptable due to lack of adjustments and failure to make adjustments that were clearly indicated and not supporting anything in the sales comparison approach. We reached out to respondents seeking their work file, to which we received numerous responses stating that they did not believe that they needed to comply nor provide any more information because they are not required to make adjustments under USPAP, so they did not see the validity in the complaint. So we received the work file, or we received the appraisal from the complainant. That went out to review. The reviewer found that the appraisal failed to provide support by relevant evidence and logic. They found that it failed to be prepared in a manner that met expectations of parties who were regularly intended users for this type of appraisal. They found that the reviewer was unable to determine if the appraiser understands and can employ techniques that are necessary to produce a credible appraisal. They found the appraisal failed to provide scope of work necessary to meet the scope of work rules. They found the appraisal lists 3 sales but did not provide any analysis typical of expectations for users. They found the comparables had no analysis, ranking, or discussion supporting value opinion that would be based on typical expectations. And they found the appraisal failed to adequately summarize the reasoning that supports their opinion. The respondent had no history, so they were offered a conditional dismissal. They denied that conditional dismissal, stating that they would not be taking another continuing education class at their own expense. They did not agree with the expert reviewer, and that they state that this was causing them mental distress, to which would lead them to sue the state and the complainant. So since this one has a lot going on, I was just kind of recommending discuss to see what you want the next steps to be.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll discuss.
I was giving somebody else the opportunity.
I mean, obviously, from all of this, report writing seems necessary. It doesn't sound like they got much out of the course 3 years ago, so they might learn something new about report writing.
So I can assume that this is a Fannie Mae report. And work
Mr. Mansfield.
one in and
Yeah,
out.
you may have to one over there.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Yes, so I can assume that it is a Fannie Mae report, and scope of work for Fannie Mae does require quantitative adjustments. It's my opinion that we actually provided them a pretty favorable option, and they declined that. So I would be to increasing that at this point.
Also, in this matter, just letting you know, we provided all of this information in an abundance of caution with the respondent, just so you had access to all of their information, especially their own, theory of approachables, of adjustments. It was very important that the information be conveyed to the commission, so you all were aware of everything that they had. So
That they specifically have not used.
So he used no adjustments at all on the entire report.
everything that
For a year.
everything that the respondent has, that we gave you everything that they provided us, including all of the emails and correspondence that we've had with them.
No adjustments and no analysis.
And they do not make corrections.
Want me to start, but I will.
Jump in.
The reviewer in this case has done a good job. So we want to give credit when it's good. Was very definitive in their comments and very specific with USPAP violations. There is a violation of the competency rule. There's a violation, in my opinion. There's a violation by the respondent's own words, using the respondent's own words. They do not make adjustments and have not made adjustments in quantitative appraisal analysis in over a year. That is a competency issue. Adjustments are required. They are typical methods of appraising that the individual's peers make on almost every assignment, and there is an expectation of adjustments being made by the users of these types of products. So it's failed the scope of work rule as well. It has failed the standard 1, where we must submit, we must use recognized techniques and methods. Making adjustments is recognized, very much so, and required where necessary. And standard 2, where we should not submit a report that cannot be understood. When all appraisals have to be understood by the intended users, if we submit reports they cannot understand, then it's a failure, non-compliance of standard. I mean, we could go on. We could go on and on. And so I'm prepared to make a motion in 3 parts. Part 1, that the individual be required to take a 15-hour report writing course, a 15-hour, redo the 15-hour USPAP course, and take the 30-hour sales comparison course. That's part 1. And take the exams and pass. Part 2, I've never done this. I was hoping I would never have to do this. I make the motion that we temporarily suspend the license of this individual until they begin to do appraisals that are sufficient. Till they take these courses and then prove that they are making the proper adjustments. And number 3, that they be monitored after license is returned to them for a period of time to be sure that they are doing the work properly. That's my 3 points. And the reason for the suspension is I think this is a gross violation of public trust.
Are you saying to suspend the license while they are taking the education classes?
Until they could start doing the appraisals correctly.
So
Yes, it would be after taking the classes.
Okay, and then monitoring as soon as the license is given. Okay, that's, I wanted to make sure we were, I mean, with a suspended license, can't do any work for us to monitor. So that's, I want to make that clear. Okay.
with that, do you want them to submit so many reports to the commission for review to reinstate?
I think we would need to do that.
Okay, may want to get specific on number of reports.
I'm willing for you to add to the motion as you want to.
Well, on the probation side, they will be monitored during the probation. I think the number of reports to review, you don't want them to get too far out there. So you may want to, the first 5 reports look at.
That's fine.
Because you don't want to say too many because now they're getting too far out there.
So just for clarification, so they suspended while they take the classes, the license is reinstated, and then they have to submit the first.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yes.
The only concern with that is from 2014 to 2020, he was practicing properly and then decided for some reason in the last year, I'm no longer going to make adjustments.
He said he changed methodology because
he wasn't doing it very good to begin with, and the solution to that is just to stop doing it. I mean, it is just speaking personally, if somebody sent a report in like that, we just reject it, and that would be the end of his time on our panel. There's no way. I don't understand how anyone could even accept these reports. Fannie Mae's not going to accept that. If they do initially, it's going to come back and be a complaint with the state at some point.
Okay, so we have a lot of things to work through regarding the discipline. So we've got the courses: report writing, 15 hours; USPAP, 15 hours; sales comparison, 30 hours; and the test with all of
3
those.
of those.
Okay. Temporarily suspend the license.
Just while you're on the classes, so in person or remote.
So until the rule, well, I mean, it's not going to count. So you guys can make a recommendation. It's not going to count towards their license anyway, so I don't think it matters. That's what I would tell them.
I typically let them decide which they want to do since they want education. But if you want to specify,
No, I just wanted to make sure we were clear.
So temporarily suspend the license. So that's the part that I was a bit confused about. So are we temporarily suspending the license before or after the courses? Immediately. Okay, so how long is the temporary suspension lasting?
Well, the education is completed.
Until they complete the education.
Okay, until the education is complete.
Typically, it's 180 days to get it complete.
Well, it just depends. We usually 180 day. If is that how long we want to give the person to give the course to complete the courses? That's usually when we the length of time we give them. So it would be 180 days. So a 6-month suspension.
Can you say if they don't comply within 6 months, it turns to a permanent suspension?
No.
So they could just wait it out.
No, I mean the suspension can remain until compliance. So okay.
We can make that 6 months, but if they complete it before 6 months,
it
it
lifts.
It
So
can go
until
away early.
Okay. And then the monitoring. Who is monitoring?
Does the commission need to monitor that, or can the reviewer monitor it, or can the legal department? We got 3 options here.
So I guess my question is, what exactly? I know we talked about submitting reports. Okay, we reports of assignments that are being given. So I know the likelihood of this happening is very low. Also, I know that this particular respondent has expressed their frustration of possibly leaving the profession too. So I don't know how many assignments, especially, they might even get if they have a suspension on their record too. So, so I guess my question is, we're monitoring assignments that may or may not come in.
Well, they would have to come in for us to monitor.
Right, I know, but that would be relying on people to give them assignments.
The individual has shown a lack of cooperation. If that continues, it will come back before the commission.
Right, no,
and
I'm
we'll make
just
another.
like, I'm thinking we're assuming that they're going to get work.
I think you have to make an assumption.
Okay, so assuming that they get work, they're being monitored, and that work would need to be submitted to us to be reviewed.
I think so. By this reviewer did a good job.
By this reviewer.
Yes.
And what would happen then?
Reviewer makes a report to us.
Okay, and if the report comes back with findings.
Negative findings, we reevaluate. Positive findings, we congratulate the person and say, have a good life.
Okay, and how many reports are we looking at?
5.
5? Or are we looking at 5, or are we looking at reports?
And that's 5 to get through the suspension.
Get through the probation time.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this like 5? Are we doing 5 the first 5? Are we doing 5 over a period of time? Or are they picking 5? So
I think it needs to be their first 5 if we're trying to make sure that they're understanding the methodology and applying it appropriately. We want to catch it as early as we can. We don't want to give 6 months and have them pick 5 reports over the course of 6 months, because I don't know how many other reports have been done.
right, okay. Okay.
Just to clarify, the temporary suspended license is going to end when the education is completed, not when these first 5 come in. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just make sure I have all of this correct to regurgitate back to you guys. So, hypothetically speaking, this would be what would be in the consent order that we would offer the respondent if this motion were to pass. That it would be a temporary suspension that would begin upon execution of the consent order. It would require the respondent to take 15 hours of report writing, 15 hours of USPAP course, and 30 hours of sales comparison. All of those would have to take the test and be completed in 180 days or less. If it is completed in less than 180 days, then the suspension is lifted. After that time, the first 5 assignments that are received are to be submitted to the legal division. Those assignments are to be submitted then to the expert reviewer that looked at this review, and those are to be reviewed for any findings. Any findings will then be submitted to the commission for further review at that time.
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay, so just a couple of things so you guys are aware of this. So this is an offer. So the respondent is able to say yes or no. So a suspension will not take place unless they were to consent to it. So if the respondent says no, then the matter will proceed to a contested case proceeding, which would go to the Administrative Procedures Division. And since this is then, that would likely mean that we would have a hearing before you all at the November meeting, because that's the next commission meeting that we would have. And then that is when we would make a determination at that time. So until then, we would not be able to have the individual be suspended.
They don't accept, can we revoke license?
No.
Okay.
That is something you can make a determination at the hearing at that time. I do not think that this particular matter would be a matter that is appropriate for summary suspension. Summary suspension is when I don't think it meets all of the different criteria for that at the time period. So that is just like the timeline that we're looking at. I want to make sure that people are aware, because sometimes we get the convoluted, sometimes there's confusion about suspension, that it automatically happens at the end of the meeting. It doesn't happen unless the person agrees. Okay. Any other questions?
I guess one question I would have,
Yes.
can we get it done by the November meeting and it not be pushed out? Like right now we're into March for the next meeting. So that's several months that they would be practicing. That's our next meeting after November.
Is March. So when we send out consent orders, the individual has 30 days to respond. And then at that time, it depends on whether he obtains the respondent obtains counsel or not, and then we go from there. And I mean, it would be our goal to try and have it done by November. I certainly don't want it to extend to March, preferably. But we can't make those predictions at that time. So that would be our hope.
Very good. We have a motion on the table. I don't believe we have a second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. So are you good with this recommendation?
I think I don't have an issue with the recommendation. I definitely think that's something we could send out in a consent order. Don't get your hopes up. Actually, one more thing before we do it. The only thing that I'm slightly concerned about is that we do kind of have some loose ends at the end regarding the monitoring. So at the very end, you say if there are findings, we make a determination. We need to have some kind of definitive, I think, cutoff to this. I don't want it to be like an ongoing thing where a respondent is like essentially before us forever. So if that individual, if there are findings, we need to make some kind of final decision of what will happen. So
Can that be done in a called meeting?
In a called meeting?
Called meeting of the commission, like after those 5, if it comes back that they still have issues, can we have a called commission meeting to respond to the reviewer's findings?
I'm just thinking, like, if I'm on the other side of it and I'm like representing someone's client, I don't know if I'm going to have my client sign something on the other end if they don't know what's at the very end of, like, okay, if there are findings at the end, the commission can then, what is at the end? It's just like a big question mark.
So let me ask this.
So, like, then at that time, if there are findings, the suspension is then put back in place for a year, or their license is revoked, or they are to submit 3 more reports and then the matter is closed. Like, we need some, like, a bow on the end. Do you get what I'm thinking about here?
So if all of this doesn't work, my motion will be to revoke. Does the respondent have to agree to that?
So, like, no, like at the end, so what it would say is, so let me just say it all over again, because it would be, I interrupted the motion because it's different now. So it would be, here we go. It would be, the motion would be a consent order authorizing a temporary suspension until the respondent completes a 15-hour report writing class, 15-hour USPAP course, 30 hours of sales comparison. All of those courses include the test. They have 180 days to complete that, those courses, or the suspension remains, unless they complete the courses earlier than the suspension is lifted. At that time, then the respondent is to submit the first 5 assignments to the legal division. Those are then to be submitted to the expert reviewer. that submitted, this is going to be my recommendation, that made the review of the original complaint, or an expert reviewer that's available in case their contract expires for some reason. And at that time, if any findings are made, any findings are found by the expert reviewer, their license is to be revoked.
We need to amend that original motion then.
That.
Yeah.
So moved. I won't repeat it.
Second.
Okay. And if I remember right, we need to vote on the amendment and then we vote on the new motion. Is that?
My understanding is if you vote on the amendment, you don't have to vote on the previous
Okay.
motion.
Okay. I've been in meetings where we've done both, so very good.
Motion as amended.
Yep. So we have an amended motion and second. Further discussion. Hearing none, we will vote on the amended motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes. I think we got through it. Moving on to 13.
Okay, 13. Oh, before we get started, Commissioner Mansfield needs to recuse himself.
Yes, I'll recuse myself from the next two.
Thank you.
So 13 and 14 are connected, and I will read both the numbers into the record. 13 is 201-806-2301, and 14 is 202-00-02971. So this is a represent for a case that's been going on for a while. And last time it was voted for Commissioner Mansfield to re-review the report to see if the findings were consistent with the initial review, to see if it was an appraisal or not. I will summarize what he found during his review. It was found that the respondent admittedly failed to keep a work file for each property appraised, which violated the record-keeping rule. Noted that the report stated that the real property valuations are presented in a restricted appraisal report format, and as such, most sections typically included in an appraisal report have been omitted and or abbreviated. And it said, although the reader is forewarned that omissions could make the report misleading, and it does have a disclaimer in there. Found that the report is limited in many regards and cannot be fully understood as preparation for the reference intended use. Lots of papers. The next one was under Standard Rule 1.1 and Standard Rule 2.1. They found that much of the valuation is referenced in the work file with no work file there. There was substantial error of omission that significantly affected the appraisal. Found that under Standard Rule 1.3a that the appraisal report failed to identify existing land use regulations, economic supply and demand, and the physical adaptability of the real estate and market area trends. Found that the report states, based on continued use, they have assumed that the current use of the real properties as telecom-owned town or sites is there and as best use, but that the highest and best use was presented in a restricted format and employed extraordinary assumptions for the conclusion. A summary paragraph was completed as an analysis for the sales comparison approach. It was noted that the summary conclusion did not state detailed schedules of real property values as presented in Appendix H, but this was, I believe, unable for you to fully see it as it was scanned in. Is that right? That's kind of the same situation for the cost approach. It was scanned in. Under Standard Rule 1.5, there was no mention of any prior sales options or listings mentioned in the appraisal report. Under Standard Rule 1.6, only a summary table with no analysis was provided as reconciliation. The certification under Standard Rule 2.2, the certification states assistance was provided by various names but did not summarize the assistance. In the conclusion, Commissioner Mansfield mentioned that this was a report. This was an appraisal report, and that it was violating use PAP in numerous areas.
Thank you.
Additionally, a response was provided by the respondent. It's a redacted response on the iPad, but I can go through a summary of that as well. So the respondent's counsel is making two arguments. The first is that this did not constitute an appraisal, rather it was a specialized service for a single client who set the parameters for the valuation and therefore falls within an exception to Tennessee's definition of an appraisal assignment. Secondly, their argument is that even if this is considered an appraisal assignment, that the person that conducted it in Tennessee received a temporary license to perform appraisals here. The issue that has been previously mentioned on that is that it was only gained for one property, and there was 9 properties appraised here in Tennessee. Their argument against that is that they complied with it, with how the website appeared it to them, and that they applied with all that they could, and they believe that they complied with the requirement even though it's not an appraisal.
Very good. Thank you. We have the information. We will open it up for discussion.
I'm not, Mr. Mansfield, I'm not sure what the intended use is. Could you explain that? Can he explain that?
Yes. And answer any
The
questions.
intended use.
Yeah, the intended use was for internal asset various other valuations of the property of which they own it.
Internal, would you explain what that means? I mean, I know what it means, but could you explain how that was going to be used specifically?
I believe their client was going to use it for internal asset valuation. The user of those services wanted to the different valuation components of not only the property components that they acquired.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So sometimes the internal reports are then used for external reporting, or assumptions are made where it's reported to investors that such is the value of our assets. So does it fall out into external hands indirectly in that way?
I'm not sure on that. I mean, they prepared it for that's what it said. The intended use was prepared for that client specifically. I'm not sure.
So
They were a third party. They didn't work for that company, correct?
Ooh, I'm not 100% sure on that.
Is that a question y'all can answer? Given that there's 2 names given in the argument, it sounds like they were a third party that was hired to perform this valuation. Okay.
So you don't know also whether this was going to be used for depreciation purposes, accounting depreciation purposes, or a base valuation for future capital gains payments. You don't know any of that.
I don't believe it mentioned that. The actual real estate valuation component is a very, very large report. 2 or 3 pages, and then reference to a certification and in the addenda of the report. So
It says its sole use was for internal valuation.
Do you all have the chance to read the response? Okay, just making sure.
Here's another question that I've had since the beginning of this. The date of the report and the date of the temporary license then becoming permanent, how do they relate? Did they get a temporary license after the date of the report, or did they get the temporary license before?
Before.
Did they get it before?
Yeah.
Okay.
The issue was that there was 9 properties in Tennessee, and it was
yeah,
only for one
and with
property.
that, they say, well, they blame it on the website, but they understood that there were multiple properties. They can pick up the phone, call the office, or they could submit in writing that it's multiple properties. That falls on them, not on the state, as far as the website. That's something that burden of proof falls on them, not on the website, is the way I look at it. I've got a list of things
Okay.
to address, about 18 of them. And the first one had to do with the license, as far as the timing of it. And it sounds like the report was misleading. Is that a question I can ask Commissioner Mansfield?
You can ask that, yeah.
Why don't you clarify that? In what regard?
Was it clear, was a report written in a manner, and I know it was done in a restricted format, was it clear as to the valuation and what they did? As far as, and I guess the other side is, there appears to not be a work file. However, in the argument, they said that originally a work file was submitted.
Basically, to my understanding of what the response was saying, it was not a specific work file for each property. Rather, it was a working file that they put all of their information into. So they were not keeping specific work files on.
Yeah, in doing a restricted appraisal report, the report itself is thin, but the work file is large.
Correct.
Were you able to understand the methodology used through the information that they provided, and did the report itself, did it, there's several violations. Did that cause, as far as a group of violations, did it cause the whole report to be misleading?
I was not able to fully understand the development of in the original report with the information provided, and yes, I would say to your.
And that's consistent from the first review when this was first submitted 4 years ago.
Correct.
Going on, I think it's interesting, especially in their argument. They're arguing both sides. They recognized that it was an appraisal. They hired a company to perform the valuation. They recognize that it is a valuation, and they go ahead and get a temporary license. Let's see, number 4. I've numbered these, and there are several pages. They sort of, I think this is, they sort of talk about that it was a value, not an appraised value. I think they're one and the same. Number 5. Let me find all my numbers. Number 5 is on page 13, going back to the original. Yeah, I'd sort of question, they said that Tennessee cellular telephone towers are designated as public utility property pursuant to Tennessee code. The land in which towers sit on is real estate, is real property. Number 6, goes to the argument that I already mentioned. If and it's at the bottom of page 13. If they weren't acting as appraisers, then why did they feel the need for a license? Number 7, and it's over on page, and that's getting into their argument. They note that other states have closed these matters, and they make it appear that they all closed without it anything. However, they did note, and it's a background on the first page, there were 3 states that resolved it with cautionary notices and continuing education. So there were other states did recognize this report had issues.
Yeah, they just, I guess their statement is that they saw them through with a letter of warning requiring continuing education rather than a consent order, which is not something that we do.
Yeah, if you submit it, require education, I guess it would go on record. I don't know how other states could be different. If you submit to do education, I would think it would go on the register, or registry. Number 8, and this is at the bottom of the first page. And it jumps in. It appears that the writer of this report acted as an appraiser. Number 9 was my question on the work file. Number 10, they admit they had a real property team. So once again, they're recognizing that they had a real property question, had to hire appraisers. Number 11, they're arguing both sides. If it's this, pick a side and argue it, I guess is my thoughts. Number 12, the argument, number 12, they give cite several cases regarding expert testimony. I don't think that's what we're into on this.
No.
So I'd sort of throw that argument out. Number 13, this is page 2. That special assignment, because they hired a third party to perform this valuation, I think it meets the definition of an appraisal assignment. I think that argument is weak.
My question on that is,
My question is, we said it was an independent contractor who did this. In the first part of the letter, just for my own clarification, says the response is submitted on behalf of blank and its employees blank and blank.
So, and this is my understanding of it, is that there's 2 people involved in it. One is an employee. The one for Tennessee was hired specifically to do the one in Tennessee. There was somebody that completed the entire evaluation that I believe is an employee with them, and then the person that completed it in Tennessee is a third party.
Okay, so this letter is not supporting the appraiser at all. It's just the company, and we're not going.
This is for.
Okay.
The respondents are the 2 appraisers involved, and this is from their counsel.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
Number 14 of mine, it just continues to go back to why did they hire an appraiser and write an appraisal report if it wasn't an appraisal? 15, they wrote a report, acted like appraisers. 16, they admitted that it was an appraisal. 17, it had my argument that I already talked about, the website. And 2, we have ruled on this at least twice. They're the ones that have not accepted. So they're the ones that are continuing to kick the can down the road, per se. My recommendation is, I recognize that they've got a temporary license, then a permanent license, and now we find that they had issues. I would contend that we hit them on the issues. And previously, we hit them at $1,000 per property, I believe. My recommendation would be hit them at $1,000 per violation.
Also, sorry, just to clear on the record, I misspoke. Only one of them is an appraiser. When I was answering your question, I said the appraisers. Sorry, just to clarify that.
And they were a third party, correct?
One of them works for the company, and one of them is third party.
So out of these complaints, there's two of them.
Yes.
The temporary license is a third party, and then the permanent is an employee? Okay.
But only the appraiser signed the report, or did the employee sign it as well?
An appraiser signed the report, and then the certification is at the end of the document. You can see it. And then it says assisted by, and there are individuals listed, but they did not sign the report. Only
So the
one
person that signed the big report is not an appraiser. The people that it says assisted by, those are the ones that are the appraisers, the temporary license person under it.
More interesting.
So that's the issue. Is that it appears like an appraisal, but a non-appraiser signed it.
It's at the very end.
It's
You
at
can
the,
look at
right
it.
here, here.
Yeah, I use the word appears.
So the person that signed the certification that's presented in our documents is not the one that got the temporary license or the one that became a permanent.
Correct. That's number. Yeah,
Then
correct,
it's not
yes.
an appraisal. I mean, that it was performed by a non-licensed appraiser.
Correct.
So it makes no difference that the person who assisted has a temporary practice permit. They didn't sign the certification.
Then we're right back where we started 4 years ago on this, that it was unlicensed. Yes, I go back to my argument. We've ruled on this. If they want a hearing, the next step is a hearing.
Okay. Yeah. Last time we had just voted on getting it re-reviewed, and
Right.
so
And I don't think we're any different than what we were 4 years ago.
Well, my question now is, we don't have any issue with the person who got the temporary practice permit because all they did is assist on the report. We have an issue now with the person who signed the certification, which is an employee of the company.
So there are two different consent orders. One is for the employee, one is for the one that got temporary license. If you wanted to reopen up the one about the temporary license, that's number 14. They have not signed their
The
consent
one with
order
the
either.
temporary report only applied for one property and there are 9. Is that the issue?
That was the issue. And then they say that they were they understood that they thought they got it for every property because of how the website was set up, but it actually was only for one property.
Our decision on that individual was only one-time $1,000,
Correct.
not per property. Just
Correct.
$1,000 consent order.
I think it goes back to per property.
We didn't, not what I read here.
13 and 14 were different. 13 is for per property. The one with the temporary license was just a one time.
I say we take no action. We just leave what's already in place and enforce it.
That's my thoughts.
For both 13 and 14. Okay. Yeah, and then
They either accept or we go to a hearing.
so I was gonna say the next step would be just to go to a hearing if it's not accepted.
Do we need a motion for that?
Not. Yes, we do need. Just because it's been redecided a few times.
I don't think we've changed.
No, but to have it re-reviewed
Yeah.
and then.
Right. The reason I'm saying we need a motion to go back to the new decision is because, like, if we didn't have a motion, the last motion that the last decision that we had was to submit it for re-review. So we can make a motion to go back to the original decision. Does that clarify it?
I'll make a motion that we issue a consent order to case.
Commissioner Atwood, you're.
It's supposed to be on. I make a motion for case number 201-806-2301. We issue a consent order for $1,000 per property. And for the other case number is 202-000-2971, a consent order for $1,000. I think that's probably light, but that's what we've done.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Are there comments from legal counsel? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion passes. I believe that completes.
That's it for the legal report, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
I think we're ready for the
Aero conference updates.
correct. I know recently Taylor and Anna were in attendance to that as well, and I believe there was someone else that went as well. So if we'll just open the floor, and then you can sort of give a quick update.
You sent us to San Antonio, and we were hit in the head by birds. I kid you not. So we went to Aero. It feels like so long ago. A couple of months ago, and the talk of the conference mostly was this thing we've never heard of called Perea. Perea, and also they talked about a lot about the PAVE report. So we had a lot of conversations. Oh, also, Aero is updating its website.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's done it now, but it's getting a really great update. So everybody be excited about that. So a lot about Perea's updating. So that is exciting. I think one of the things that we're going to be looking at, we're on the states of where, on the list of states where Perea is incorporated via our rules, just because we kind of incorporate with what the appraisal subcommittee kind of goes with. But I want to look at the rules a little bit deeper to make sure that we have something a little bit more concrete about it, so it's not as I don't know, hypothetical. So I think that's something that's more important. They did say that they're working on providers. They do have a long list of individuals that are very interested in pursuing Perea, but the issue right now is finding sponsors for the individuals to take part in Perea. Apparently, people don't want to sponsor their eventual competition, and I don't understand what's going on there. But based on the information that's going on, I think it is going to be a great way to get more individuals involved in the industry. Another great topic of conversation that they talked about was the PAVE report. A lot of states were talking about what initiatives they were taking forward, taking part of to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion in their different practices, and what, if any, they were seeing in their complaints from consumers. I don't remember a lot of states saying that they were seeing a lot of complaints that were coming, but that may be part of the wave that we may be seeing after the housing market kind of slows down, after the complaints come from the real estate agents and move over to the real estate appraisers. Taylor and I got to participate in some of the legal breakdowns that we were part of, and got to that was actually pretty interesting to talk about, like, the makeup of our board. One of the conversations that they were particularly interested was like board member immunity. For some reason, I don't know. I was like, our board members, that doesn't really happen, so it doesn't. Yeah, they were really worried about it, so let's not let it be an issue that we need to continue to worry about. So the appraisal subcommittee was there. They were very helpful. It was just kind of interesting to have people gathered post-pandemic. I think it was the first conference after, like, in person, so everyone was like squarely to talk to each other, and we were just kind of like hanging out in the back, kind of saying hey to people, but we got a lot of interesting tidbits under our belt. So anybody have any questions about
on Perea?
anything?
I think
Yes.
the one issue that we may have to deal with, and this is going on a very sketchy memory, is how many hours we would accept for that with
Right.
regard to experience.
So my understanding, based on what we learned, is Perea is very much an all or nothing the way it's been designed. So if that is something that we want to do, my recommendation is that we would accept the way that it is being designed. So so if someone is going through Perea, they have to complete the entire program. So if they don't complete the entire program, they don't get any credit at all. So it's really not designed for the states to kind of accept it piecemeal. Like, you can accept it piecemeal and have some additional requirements that's permitted, but that's not really kind of what they were envisioning it to do. But of course, that's like a decision that the board can make at a different time. So
My other question is, vendors that are putting together a Perea program, would the state then review each vendor and then have state-approved vendors for Perea programs? Because they may look different. They won't be, apples to apples.
right, I think it's going to be kind of similar to the programs that they have for the degree programs that they use, that are used. So you can get certain credit for associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and graduate degrees based upon the courses that you take and how many hours. I remember we had this conversation, and Commissioner Alexander basically changed University of Mississippi, and he was like, they had a deficit, so we had to fix that. So I think that they're basically going to have to follow a same kind of structure. So we would be kind of approving it generally, based on that kind of way. I don't think we would have to be like breaking the mold every single time. My understanding is Foundation has a lot of materials ready for us to make it as easy as possible. Also, they are very willing to assist whenever needed. So I don't think we have any fully complete programs yet, but when that happens, it'll be available. But I think they said they had like a wait list already of like 2,000 people or something like that, of people that have signed up and said that they're interested in Perea. So, yeah. I'm surprised, to be completely honest. No, not about the wait list. She was talking about my memory.
Oh yeah, she just gave the presentation. So I was gonna say, I was like.
Any other questions?
If there's any questions, I'd like to extend and sort of piggyback off the conference and just extend on to the next conference, which is the fall. And that's October 14th through the 17th. They're, of course, in D.C. Nothing's changed there. But since we won't be meeting until November, we need to go ahead and vote on who will be in attendance to that conference. So I would oftentimes, and historically, it appears that this board has sent one, and I don't know that we've sent two before.
Two.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, two. But I would recommend an alternate as well, because since we won't be meeting in November, if we select two, let's just go ahead and get an alternate lined up as well, so that someone can step in and we don't miss any momentum in that regard. So if you would discuss.
Any volunteers?
I have not been before. I would like to go.
It's our fall break, and I already have plans.
Same with us.
Else?
And be the backup for second if anything comes up with Commissioner Alexander.
Fair. We do have a member that is absent. I have not heard from her, but we could do Dr. Jane, do you as the primary since she's not here and I haven't heard from her. And of course, if you can't, that's fine. Then she would just move in as the backup, and then maybe Miss Haston then as the backup, unless I hear somebody else that's expressing any interest.
So we would be sending two, Commissioner Jane and Commissioner Alexander.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
And with Haston as a backup.
Very good.
And then staff attendance would be myself and, of course, our two attorneys as well.
Very good. I would make that as a motion.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Very good. Thank
Sir.
you.
The complaint process update. At our last meeting, it was brought up that I think it was intimated that we don't open up Fannie Mae complaints, but as you can see, we do, and so we look at those as potential discrepancies. As our number 10. As they come across our desk, if there's discrepancies there, they come before the board. But at some point, too, there might be some criteria to be cogitating on, some guidelines from the board. Obviously, we don't have to hash that out right now, but something to be thinking about. And, of course, I think Anna has more to add on that as well.
I have a question. So I know there are difference between the Fannie Mae notifications that we get. They did talk about these at Arrow, but I can't remember the other type. I think they said one was a tip and one is a complaint. And so my understanding from most of the jurisdictions is that they do not open complaints for tips, but complaints for, it was mixed for complaints. So
I would say if they're filing a complaint, You treat the complaint like any other complaint.
Right. So when I get, for example, let me just show you some of the language of something that I would receive that would be sent to me. And this is what it would say from Fannie Mae. So it would say, the Fannie Mae Loan Quality Center has recently conducted a review of the attached appraisal report and concluded there were substantial errors which led to a non-credible result. To support your state's effort in ensuring compliance with professional appraisal standards, this appraisal report is being provided to your agency. And it states the following issues were identified by Fannie Mae: inadequate comparable adjustments, use of dissimilar comparable sales due to site characteristics, use of physically dissimilar comparable sales, and others. And so it says any investigation or action is at the discretion of your agency. And so it just says here, it doesn't state specifically if it's like a tip or a complaint. And so based on that complaint there, I would open that complaint. Yay or nay?
It had specific complaints that are legitimate complaints. So I think that one should be processed.
I've seen hundreds of those letters, and I will tell you about 90% of the time, there's nothing to them.
Yeah, my thought would be exactly the same, that it's an automated system. The dissimilar comparable sales, that all goes through their UAD portal, and so it's just a computer-based complaint, and so
it's called Collateral Underwriter, and it's just an algorithm based on what other appraisers in the same market area have done. So depending on when you run it through, determines what their risk score is. If it's under 2.5, there is completely reps and warrants, and the appraiser doesn't have to worry about the appraisal report ever coming back. So based on that, our gentleman who stopped doing adjustments could have hit the number correctly and got a 1. And they would consider that an acceptable appraisal when it's not an acceptable appraisal. Or you can get a somewhat unique property that their scores are from 1 to 5, and that's a 5, and the report is perfect. So the more the market changes, the more of those letters you're going to get, because I am personally already starting to see 1 or 2 a week based on work we've done over the last 18 months.
I guess my question is, like, based on like what I'm getting, I'm unable to ascertain what to open a complaint for and what not to, because usually when these come to me, they have at least 3 to 5 different listings there.
That comes directly from Collateral Underwriter.
Right.
They'll give you a listing of 10 properties that they think are better comparables.
Right. And so today we dismissed 9 of them, but one of them we actually had discipline for. So my question would be, do we continue to open the complaints, or
I feel like it needs to say that it's an actual complaint, not just a FYI.
I don't know.
Who signs the letter?
It says the Loan Quality Center.
No individual?
I've never seen an individual.
Oh, okay.
Hold on one second.
I think it needs to be an individual.
hold on 1 second.
And to add, while you're looking at that, with what Commissioner Bennett said, dissimilar comparables, in order to lower the risk score, it really has to do with distance. It doesn't even matter if the comparables are property that's closer. And so really it's going to make appraisers wary of doing anything completely complex at all. I would, I'll put my opinion in the form of a motion. I don't know if we can do that or not.
And I will also say on that, they don't allow appraisers to have access to this information, in which that they determine what is credible and what is not credible, but they won't share the information with the appraiser, but then they'll file a complaint against them, which I think is just completely wrong. And I've said that before. It's a system that goes against the appraiser virtually every time, other than the score being under 2.5, then they don't have to worry about it anymore. But these all come up, they don't just come up randomly. They come up based on something else being wrong with the loan, and then they start reviewing everything. So it could be so much as, somebody calculated their debt to income ratio wrong, there was a piece of paper missing, and then it opens up these investigations, and this is what it turns into.
And Mr. Mansfield, you are welcome to offer a motion to memorialize the commission's position.
Sure. I'd make a motion that in order to file a complaint, an individual has to be associated with that, whether it is because you don't have to. It doesn't have to be. Nobody has to put their name with it. Correct? When filing a complaint, you can do it anonymous.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to have an individual associated, though. It only comes from the Loan Quality Center. So, like, the one that we had today, that one we would have never opened it because it's never an individual.
I think you're opening a can of worms by doing this, and so I'll make a motion that unless it's a specific individual, we dismiss as complaints. Yeah, I think that.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does Freddie, VA, FHA, farm, home, whatever, do they submit similar complaints, or is it just Fannie?
I haven't seen one.
Personally, it's probably 10-1.
Okay.
I'm the one that sees these most often. So I'm the one. Fannie Mae is really the only one I see. I see this weird Atlanta Home Association as well, but Fannie Mae is the most common, and that's really the only one I ever see.
I'm looking at these 9 complaints that we dismissed, and what I'm seeing is that the complaint was over untimely. They didn't show up on time. They didn't turn the report in when they said they were going to. Those are not things the commission needs to be. That's a business decision, and but when they say something like they violated, they didn't adjust properly. Jason, Mr. Bennett, you can address this because you sell these. But when they say they don't adjust properly and they don't pick the appropriate comps, I understand the collateral underwriter system. I understand that, but at the same time, are we shirking responsibility if they say some very specific USPAP violation? Now, whether they showed up on time is irrelevant to our commission.
Just to clarify, also, all those ones that had to do with them being untimely were made by the homeowners or agents listed.
Number 5 is an example of a Fannie Mae complaint.
After those ones, that's when they started.
And number 6. Number 5 states that Fannie Mae Loan Quality Center submitted this complaint after reviewing the appraisal in question. Complainant alleges they believe there were substantial errors that led to a non-credible result.
Is that all the information they gave you?
That's all the information that's in
See,
the
that's
complaint.
And then the next one is the same thing. A complaint was filed stating Fannie Mae alleged discrepancies within the report in question.
Yeah, that's too general.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these are. the discrepancies are based on what they think you should do as opposed to what has been done. And
it only has to do with the adjustments, correct? It doesn't analyze the analysis. Talking about protecting, public trust. As an appraiser, I can only assume that individuals who can't acquire loans if they're, if they live on acreage in a rural area, because appraisers are.
they already are.
Yeah, of these properties, and it's because of this.
Correct.
These are not reviews done by appraisers or by people. It's a system that can be manipulated, and it's unfairly targeting appraisers.
You can tell when they're serious when we get a request in that has had a third-party review done. There are some that they complete that someone has actually reviewed and they've read the report. Those are the ones that makes me sit up and take notice. The ones that are just very generic and have no specific items addressed in there are literally, in my opinion, I don't know this for a fact, are coming based off their algorithm and a warning flag. I feel like if you're going to process a complaint, there needs to be specific items addressed. Now, I've never seen one signed, but if there are multiple specific items addressed, I'll look at that and say, okay, we need to have the appraiser address this. This is what we do. We go back to the original appraiser, we have them address those items, and then additionally, I get my own third-party review to make sure that the person who initially reviewed it wasn't biased.
Okay, we have a motion, and I'll second it. That way we can go ahead and get into a further discussion on this. And the motion relates to the Fannie Mae side. And once we deal with this motion, I'd like to address one of our legal cases from today, depending on how this motion.
If I understand the motion, it essentially tells the legal department to ignore every Fannie Mae request.
Automated request, yes.
Automated request. It's not signed.
No, it's going to ignore all of them because they're not signed.
So, again, Mr. Bennett, on the ones that do specify, when they do that, they are sufficient to get your attention, even though they're not signed. It's an automated report that comes to you, but sometimes they come to you with specific violations.
An example is number 10.
Okay.
On the complaint today, there were specific issues in there. What I have liked to see, typically it's a page-long write-up when I'm seeing these.
But like number 10, if I read you, this is what it said. Like in the Fannie Mae letter, the violation said inadequate comparable adjustment, use of dissimilar comparable sale due to site characteristics, use of physically dissimilar comparable sale gross living area. That's all it says for number 10.
Can I revise the motion? Or can I make another motion?
We have to
on the table.
Vote the one
On this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Discussion. You could, in further discussion, offer an amendment, and if the person made the original motion in the second, if they accepted that, they could amend their motion if you wanted to go that route too. So that's, you could.
Let me try to do that. I suggest that we might consider amending the motion and taking off the part about signing the report and putting in that we only how am I going to work this? We only consider for a complaint something that has specific violations enumerated.
And this is,
I'm just saying those are the only things that were listed. That's what's listed on the letter to Fannie Mae for number 10.
so this is.
So that's the
I don't
only thing
know
I can make a decision
it's appropriate, but I have one that I'm currently working on that I could read how it comes over to us specifically,
Right.
the language. And this is adjusted value of comparable sales failed to support appraised value. Comparable sales 2 and 3 failed to support the estimated value. Sales 2 and 3 were the most proximate sales. The adjusted sales price of comparable 2 and 3 was 25% below the appraised estimated value. Sales 3 was 30% below the estimated value. The following are considered unacceptable appraisal practices: use of adjustments to comparable sales that don't reflect market conditions, not supporting adjustment in the sales comparison approach, failure to adjust when they are clearly indicated. So, and then it goes very much into in depth on what those were.
Right. But that's not what comes over here. So here's my recommendation. You guys can take it or leave it. My recommendation would be, what if we continue to open these and send them out for expert review, but if it does not come back with any findings, we're permitted to administratively close them. So then it would not even be considered a complaint.
Only problem with that is there's an expense to the state for the review.
It is. It is an expense, but the closing them, I mean, I'm not able to make.
You don't want to make that decision.
I mean, we get a copy of this cover letter and a copy of the appraisal report. And I'm not an appraiser, so someone is going to have to look at either or in order to make a determination of what it is. So
My concern, and maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly, but they're coming. If you're getting a letter, they're coming back after that appraiser. So then we're also potentially assisting. It puts the appraiser in a bad position, because does the appraiser ever know that it's had an expert review done and it's been dismissed? Are we sending them a letter letting them know, hey, you had a complaint filed against you, we had an expert review done, and then it's been dismissed?
They get a letter saying that
I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Well, my issue is I would think it would be necessary, because the appraiser's going to have to defend themselves.
Like, do you want them to know?
I feel like they should, at minimum, if they're getting an expert review by the state is done, because somebody is coming back for the discrepancy in the money on these cases. This isn't just, hey, you've got some issues and we want you to address these issues. It's, hey, you haven't satisfied this and there's a loss on this loan of some way, shape, or form, and an E&O claim potentially is being filed, or a lawsuit is getting filed. So, there's so many different things in play with these letters that they're sending. It's not just a letter to the state saying, hey, I think you should be aware of this. There's a letter to the state, then there's a letter to the lender, and then the lender using an appraisal management company. There's a letter to the appraisal management company, and then, we're going back and trying to work with the appraiser to get these quote-unquote errors addressed. And if it isn't to their satisfaction, then it goes to the next level. So
typically in our complaint process, what happens what happens in this case, Caleb would send an email to me and say, Anna, do you want to open a complaint? I would say, yes, let's open a complaint. So then he would administratively open this complaint. So there would not be a complainant. The state would be the complainant. And then at that point, it would be sent to the respondent, which will be the appraiser. And the appraiser at that time would have the opportunity to submit a report. So we already have a copy of the appraisal report, so anything else that they want to submit to us at that time, they can. And then it's referred to the legal division. And at that time, then we're going to send it out to an expert reviewer. And then it's prepared, summarized, and comes to legal division. there is an option for matters to be referred directly to the legal division. So if we administratively open the complaint, it would go straight to legal instead of to the respondent. So that's why I was stating, do you want the respondent to know? So if it goes straight to us, then we send it out to the expert reviewer. And then the expert reviewer will review the report, give us the findings. If there are no findings, the matter would be administratively closed. That's the end of it.
I think that the appraiser needs to be notified.
So if the appraiser needs to be notified, then we would, at that point, I would recommend that we still go through we would send them a response, have them send it out for response, then come back to us, and we can still administratively close it. The respondent will still at that point get a letter and say that the matter has been closed.
If you're going to open the complaints, then I think
Right. If that is
Depends on this motion, how this motion.
if that is
plays
something
out.
that you would want. But as Commissioner Atwood said, that we would be charging expert reviewers to be looking at it in that case.
Well, if this motion doesn't pass, then I'll have a new motion.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing too, you know, you said before at the Aero conference, they talked about a tip and then a complaint.
Right.
This sounds like it's a tip because it's a vague.
What I can do is, so I was going back and I was looking through my emails, and all of these say inquiries or questions may be sent to the email address of lqc_state_tips@fanniemae.com. All of them say that. And so I would need to ask what would be the difference between receiving a tip and receiving a complaint. And so once I can get a definitive answer of what to look out for, I mean, I guess I could come back to you guys in November to make a decision. And until then, we can just process them as we normally would. I don't see really kind of the harm in that until then. Or if you want to just still say no. But otherwise, I don't know how I would make a determination with just what I'm not getting the specific details that Commissioner Bennett is getting when you get from Fannie Mae. I just get those general inadequate comparable adjustments, use of dissimilar comparable sales, those general statements.
Sure, and the issue is really filtering out appraisal report presented that are deficient, correct? And so the problem with this automated system is you can do, like Mr. Bennett said, you can do a terrible appraisal report and the risk score is low, and so it beats their system. There's nobody looking specifically at this. If there is a report that is deficient, the letters appraiser, if those people want to file specific complaints after looking at the reports, then I think they should be able to do that. But us on a witch hunt prosecuting appraisers who, just because there's these automated systems where it doesn't fall in the algorithm, I think it's a disservice to the public and to the appraisers. And so I'd like to vote on the motion.
I have a discussion. I think it seems like there is a useful information coming from a red flag, like an automated system, machine learning, and where as individuals trying to respond to each one, it may be possible that the first one needs to be waived or considered as, and the second or multiple infractions for the same appraiser. Can we also automate, in other words, fight a computer with a computer, not with a lot of commission time being spent on it? Do you have any capacity to automate some of this process and log how many times the same appraiser is getting flagged for these versus just one or the first one for a given appraiser?
The problem with that is that the more rural the property is, the more likely it is it's going to get flagged. So you've got, some appraisers who work in rural areas, and there's some areas still in this state where you have one or two appraisers who will do Fannie Mae reports, period. No, if there's another appraiser there, they're not doing a Fannie Mae report. So if you do that, you're penalizing those people for actually doing the work, and I think that's a bad practice to get into.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. We've discussed. Let's go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign.
I'm opposed.
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. Do we have two? Do you oppose? Okay. I think the numbers have it that the motion passes.
It does. It passes by majority vote,
Yep.
not unanimous, but
Right.
it still passes.
Yes.
And so anything that we get that's not signed by a third party that's that's listed as Fannie Mae, that's generated in that regard, then we won't enter that in.
Very good.
Did you have something?
I just have a question now. So since that is the new process, what
Number
about
10?
the two that are going? Yeah, that was going to be re-reviewed. That was Fannie Mae also.
Are both of them?
Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure
I just
they
closed
were.
it out.
We could do going forward, right? And just because basically, in essence, what this is a computer generated audit, and you catch some, certainly in every audit. But is that your process?
We're bringing this up at the next meeting now because we're getting it re-reviewed. So
Vote's already in, but that's why I opposed it, because now some are going to slip through that shouldn't slip through.
well, Commissioner Mansfield's correct. This is going not just to y'all. It's going to other entities. They have the opportunity to file a complaint. The homeowner has the opportunity. The lender has the opportunity. And if there's an appraisal management company involved, the appraisal management company has an opportunity to file a complaint if there's actual, a serious deficiency in the report. There's multiple other people who are probably in the state that are familiar with the property that have an opportunity.
Unless Taylor tells me otherwise, we'll obviously proceed with the ones we already have on file that we've already ruled on and motioned on. Did you have any other comments on regards to that?
But yeah, my only question was 10 since it was they want it re-reviewed since it wasn't discipline given. I didn't know if we wanted to move forward with it being.
Is that the only one that was Fannie Mae?
11 is the homeowner, so.
Right.
But this was in process before, so.
I'd say just continue on with it then.
Yeah, it's kind of like unfortunately, like an effective date scenario.
Effective time.
Unless there's any more comments on that or across the board, then I think we're ready for a new business chair.
Business. I don't believe there. I know of.
All right. Well, in that case, I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Very good. Thank you all.